Greetings. This is Brother Eli with another episode of Bible Truth Revealed. Today's topic is marijuana, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's marijuana, the good, the bad, and the ugly. With many countries and states legalizing the use of marijuana, many Israelites are asking if it's okay for us to smoke marijuana. Today, I will explore the subject of marijuana consumption so that we can make an informed decision about this increasingly common practice. In this teaching, I will address both the positive and negative aspects of marijuana and what every Israelite should know before using it. By the end of this teaching, I will have answered the following questions. 1. Is the marijuana a bad plant? 2. What are some uses of the marijuana plant? 3. Is it okay to eat marijuana? 4. Is it wrong to smoke marijuana? 5. Where did the practice of smoking marijuana come from? And 6. What is the real problem with modern marijuana? On www.history.com, there is an article entitled Marijuana. Quote 1 says this: marijuana, also known as cannabis or pot, has a long history of human use. Most ancient cultures didn't grow the plant to get high, but as herbal medicine, likely starting in Asia around 500 BC. So we see that most ancient cultures used the marijuana plant as herbal medicine. The purpose of the plant was not to get high. Now let's read Ecclesiasticus or Sirach in the Apocrypha, chapter 38, verse 4 and verse 7. That's Ecclesiasticus or Sirach in the Apocrypha, chapter 38, verse 4 and verse 7. I will be reading from the Brenton Septuagint translation. It reads thus: The Lord hath created medicines out of the earth, and he that is wise will not abhor them. The marijuana plant, like many other plants, is medicine that the Most High has created out of the earth. And those of us that are wise will not abhor the marijuana plant. To abhor is to hate or despise. There are some people who hate the very idea of using marijuana. They abhor the marijuana plant, which means that they are not wise. Verse 7, With such doth he heal men, and taketh away their pains. The Most High uses medicines out of the earth. This is referring to plants to heal men and take away their pains. The National Institute on Drug Abuse has archives that can be found on drugabuse.gov. In the archives is an article entitled Want to Know More? Some Facts about Marijuana. Quote 1 reads thus: Many researchers, including those funded by the National Institutes of Health, are continuing to explore the possible uses of THC, that's one of the components in marijuana, and other cannabinoids to treat symptoms of illness and other conditions such as cancer, HIV/AIDS, multiple sclerosis or MS, inflammation, pain, seizures, addiction, mental health, including disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. These are all things that the marijuana plant can help to cure or relieve. The marijuana plant is medicine that was created by the Most High. The plant can be used for good, and those that are wise will not abhor it. Genesis chapter 1 verses 11 to 12. Genesis chapter 1 verses 11 to 12 reads thus. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the herb of grass bearing seed according to its kind, and according to its likeness. This is medicine that the Most High has created from the earth. And the fruit tree bearing fruit whose seed is in it, according to its kind on the earth, and it was so. Verse 12. And the earth brought forth the herb of grass, bearing seed, according to its kind, and according to its likeness. And the fruit tree bearing fruit whose seed is in it, according to its kind on the earth. And God saw that it was good. When the Most High created the herb, when the Most High created plants, He said that they were all good. Those who are wise will not abhor the plants that the Most High said are good. On www.history.com, in the same article, Marijuana, Quote 1 continues. The history of cannabis cultivation in America dates back to the early colonists who grew hemp, that's the marijuana plant, for textiles and rope. So we see that the marijuana plant is good for medicine, for textiles, and for rope. Quote 2 in the same article says, the cannabis or hemp plant, that's the marijuana, originally evolved in Central Asia before people introduced the plant into Africa, Europe, and eventually the Americas. So it comes from Central Asia. It continues. Hemp fiber was used to make clothing, paper, sails, and rope, and its seeds were used as food. This plant is good. We see that the marijuana plant has many uses, including that it is good to eat. It is a source of food. It can be used to make salads, soups, teas, butter, oils, the list goes on. Genesis chapter 1 verses 29 to 31. Genesis chapter 1 verses 29 to 31 reads thus. And God said, Behold, I have given to you every seed-bearing herb, sowing seed, which is upon all the earth, and every tree which has in itself the fruit of seed that is sown, to you it shall be for food. We read earlier that its seeds were used as food, which means that we can eat the marijuana plant. It can be used as food. Verse 30. And to all the wild beasts of the earth, and to all the flying creatures of heaven, and to every reptile creeping on the earth, which has in itself the breath of life, even every green plant for food. And it was so. So the animals also can eat this plant for food. Verse 31. And God saw all the things that he had made, and behold, they were very good. The Most High said that all these things, including the seed-bearing herb, which includes a marijuana plant, were good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. On the website honestmarijuana.com, that's honestmarijuana.com, there's an article entitled Cooking with Cannabis, 7 Easy Tips for Beginners. Quote 1 says this: raw weed straight from the plant is non-psychoactive. That means it does not mess with your mind. It continues, in its raw form, it's just another vegetable, like spinach or kale. Spinach and kale are not bad plants. Therefore, the marijuana, being just another vegetable, like spinach or kale, means it is not a bad plant. And the Most High said that it is good. The article continues. In order to unlock the cannabinoids inside the buds, you have to dry and cure it before you use it. The cannabinoids are those things that are used to create the high. It's the chemical that makes people feel high, airy. But in order to unlock them, you have to dry it and cure it before you use it. So the raw weed straight from the plant does not mess with your mind. But when you dry and cure it before you use it, that's when it gets its psychoactive effect. That's when it messes with your mind. The quote continues, thankfully, most of the stuff you buy at your local dispensary is already dried and cured, so you don't have to worry about it. This shows that when we go and buy marijuana, it's already been dried and cured to unlock the cannabinoids that can mess with our minds. So the best way to use marijuana is to grow your own. If it is legal in the country where you live or in the state where you live and you want to use it like any other vegetable, it's best to grow your own. And that way, when you use it, it will not mess with your mind. In weed muffins, cakes, brownies, and other edibles which mess with your mind, it's because the cannabinoids had been unlocked by drying and curing. So the marijuana plant can be used like any other vegetable, and that is good. Or it can be dried and cured, and that can mess with your mind. So the question is, do you want your mind messed with? The Most High never told us to use plants to mess with our minds. They are food, they are medicine, and they have other very positive uses. Many positive uses in the case of the marijuana plant. But should we use it to mess with our minds? On www.history.com, in the same article entitled Marijuana, quote 2 continues. In the early 1600s, the Virginia, Massachusetts, and Connecticut colonies required farmers to grow hemp. Farmers in these colonies had no choice but to grow hemp. It was so useful that they were required to grow it. It continues. These early hemp plants had very low levels of tetrahydrocannabinol, that's THC, the chemical responsible for marijuana's mind-altering effects. So the chemical that can mess with your mind was very low in the early hemp plants. And we are talking in the early 1600s. So we learned earlier that the raw marijuana does not have mind-altering effects. Now we are discovering that even in the early 1600s, the marijuana plants had very low levels of THC. They were being cultivated to make textiles and rope, not for recreational use. That is, not to be smoked. This leads us to the big question. Is it wrong to smoke marijuana? Or, an even better question is, should we be smoking anything at all? On www.long.org, that's www.long.org, there's an article entitled Marijuana and Lung Health. It says this: smoke is harmful to lung health. That's any smoke harmful to the health of your lungs. Should we be smoking things to destroy ourselves? It continues, whether from burning wood, tobacco, or marijuana, toxins and carcinogens are released from the combustion of materials. Smoke from marijuana combustion has been shown to contain many of the same toxins, irritants, and carcinogens as tobacco smoke. So there are people who say, I don't smoke tobacco, I only smoke marijuana. But should you be smoking anything at all? Why are you destroying your health? That's the question. We will not find anywhere in the scriptures that show our righteous forefathers smoking anything and destroying their health. That practice of smoking marijuana, tobacco, anything at all, inhaling that air into your lungs intentionally in order to get a high, in order to get that good feeling, that comes from the heathen. That does not come from righteous Israelites. Therefore, Israelites should not be smoking anything, not only marijuana. Let's learn more about where the idea to smoke marijuana came from. On www.science.org, there is an article entitled The Origins of Cannabis Smoking. So this is going to tell us where it came from. Chemical residue evidence from the first millennium BCE in the Pamirs. The quote says this: wild cannabis, that's cannabis grown in the wild, grows across many of the cooler mountain foothills from the Caucasus to western China, especially in the well-watered habitats of Central Asia. So we are talking about Central Asia, where the first started burning the cannabis plant. It continues. However, cannabinol, or CBN, levels in most wild cannabis plant populations are low. Just like we read in the 1600s, the THC level of these plants was very low. It was the same thing even in Central Asia, where the plants were first discovered. It continues, and it remains a largely unanswered question as to when, where, and how the plant was first cultivated for higher psychoactive tetrahydrocannabinol production. What it's saying is they're not sure who first manipulated the plant in order to increase its THC levels. Originally, there was no need to manipulate the Most High's plant because it was being used for positive things, for medicine, for clothing, for food, rope, sails, paper. But when the heathen decided to smoke it, they realized in order to get a higher high, they had to increase the levels of THC in the plant. The Most High did not create the marijuana plant for anyone to smoke it. It was never intended to be used to mess with our minds. It is food, it is medicine, and it has many positive benefits. The earliest evidence of burning the marijuana plant as incense was found in graves in ancient China. However, there's no evidence that the people even then rolled the plant and smoked it. On www.history.com, the same article, Marijuana, quote 3, confirms what we've just read. It says this: the amount of THC in marijuana, the chemical responsible for the drug's potency, has increased dramatically in recent decades. In the mid-1990s, the average THC content of confiscated weed was roughly 4%. That is very low. By 2014, it was about 12%. So someone was intentionally increasing the THC levels. It continues, with a few strains of pot containing THC levels as high as 37%. So it went from 4% in the mid-1990s to as high as 37% by the year 2014. The Most High never intended for us to manipulate His plant in order to increase its THC levels so we can get a high. That's not what it was created for. It was created as food and medicine. It has lots of other uses, but it was never intended for Israelites to be using the plant to mess with our minds. The National Institute on Drug Abuse archives, drugabuse.gov, in the same article, Want to Know More? Some Facts About Marijuana, says this in quote 2. Marijuana is psychoactive. That means it messes with your mind. We read earlier that the marijuana that's straight from the plant is not psychoactive. It's just another vegetable like spinach or kale. This means that when we consume marijuana in the way that the Most High intended, it does not change how our brains work. I'll read that again. Marijuana is psychoactive. In other words, it changes how the brain works. Marijuana affects specific sites in the brain called cannabinoid receptors. These receptors send messages to different nerve cells throughout the nervous system. They affect brain areas that impact learning and memory, appetite, coordination, and pleasure. So interfering with these receptors can have significant effects on your body. The heathen have interfered with the marijuana plant by increasing the THC levels so that when we smoke it or when we dry it and cure it and use it to create edibles, brownies, muffins, and those things, it in turn would interfere with our receptors. It would interfere with our nervous system, and it will have significant negative effects on our body. Now let's explore the long-term effects, and these are the significant negative effects that consuming marijuana that has been manipulated by the heathen can have on our bodies. In the same article, in quote 3, it lists the long-term effects of repeated use of marijuana. They are 1. risk of marijuana addiction. The Most High does not want his people addicted to substances. And if the marijuana was not manipulated by the heathen, we would not have to worry about being addicted to it. Number 2, long-term learning and memory problems if heavy use begins during youth. That's another problem that the Most High never intended for us to have. Number 3, risk of chronic cough or bronchitis. 4, risk of schizophrenia in some people with higher genetic risk. And 5, in rare cases, risk of recurrent episodes of severe nausea and vomiting. So these are the long-term effects of using marijuana that has been manipulated, interfered with by the heathen. The Most High never intended for us to suffer these ill effects as a result of consuming marijuana. It is food and medicine that is good for us. The heathen has taken something that was created for our benefit and changed it into something that can be used to destroy our health. In conclusion, just like all plants created by the Most High, marijuana is good. It was created primarily for food and medicine, but it has many other positive uses. When consumed raw, it is no different to vegetables such as spinach and kale, and it has many health benefits. However, the heathen has manipulated the plant to increase its mind-altering effects. Smoking is dangerous to our health, and Israelites should not be destroying our bodies by smoking, whether marijuana or some other substance. I pray that the Most High will enable his people to understand the proper use of marijuana so that it could be used to maintain and improve our health rather than to destroy our health. And with that, I say, Shalom.